Canvas 2D supports three major ways of drawing arc-like lines using arc, ellipse, and ArcTo. Let's take them one by one, starting with arc. In Canvas 2D, arc is a method that allows you to draw arcs or circle at different radii. It takes 6 parameters, with the last one being optional. The first parameter is the x and y position on the canvas. The third parameter is the radius of the arc. The fourth parameter is starting angle of the arc, while the fifth parameter is the ending angle. These two parameters determine where the arc starts and ends. The last parameter is optional. It's a Boolean value that specifies whether the arc should draw clockwise or counterclockwise. When set to true, it draws counterclockwise. By default, it is false. Canvas 2D methods usually use radian instead of degree. You will see this in the video. When drawing a path, you usually copy begin path first, then fill or stroke after writing the drawing command. I will write an arc with x and y value of 200. For the start angle, I will give it 0. For the end angle, I will give a amount of pi. Pi is equivalent to 180 degrees, while 2 pi is equivalent to 360 degrees. It gives us a complete circle. If I say the start angle to pi divided by 2, which is 90 degrees, and the end angle to pi, I get a 90 degree arc at the bottom left side. I will set the last parameter to true. This makes the arc draw counterclockwise, giving us a larger 370 degree arc instead. Let's create a function that converts degree to radian. Since pi radian equals 180 degrees, 1 degree is equal to pi over 180 degrees. Multiplying a degree followed by pi divided by 180 converts it to radian. I will use the function to create a start angle and end angle. I will give the arc a radius of 80. You will notice that using degree is much easier to read and understand than manually writing fraction of pi everywhere. The next method we are looking at is ellipse. It takes 8 parameters. 2 of those parameters define the ellipse radius on the x-axis and y-axis, while another parameter controls the rotation. The rotation value is also written in radian. Take the ellipse itself. Let's write something down. I will create an ellipse path with x and y value of 300, a horizontal radius of 20, and a vertical radius of 15, rotated by 10 radians. I will give it a start angle of 0 and an end angle of 2 pi to draw a complete ellipse. The ellipse is too small, so I will increase the vertical radius. If both radii are equal, we get a perfect circle regardless of rotation. Now let's look at ArcTo. This one can be a little confusing if you are new to Canvas 2D, so pay close attention. ArcTo is used to create a curved corner between two lines. We do not use it alone. It is usually combined with other path methods. It takes 5 parameters. The first point x and y act like the corner point the path moves toward, while x2, y2 control the direction the curve lifts toward. The last parameter is the radius of the curve. For ArcTo, you usually do not want the curve point itself to become the starting point. That is why we need another method to define where the drawing should begin. You can define a starting point without drawing anything by using the moveTo method. moveTo takes 2 parameters, x and y. Remove the drawing cursor to a position without drawing a line. That point becomes the location where the arc starts. The first 2 parameters in ArcTo become the corner point, while the remaining 2 parameters define the direction the curve lifts toward. You can imagine it like creating a slide. The curve bends around the curve point before moving toward the slide direction. I have already created my path. I will write ArcTo, but I won't give it a value yet. At the top, I will write moveTo with x and y value of 300. Inside ArcTo, I will give the x1 value 300 so the curve starts vertically from the same horizontal position. I give y1 a value of 500 to move the corner point downward. Then I will set x2 to 500 and y2 to 300 to create a clear upward curve like a hook. I will give it a radius of 15. You cannot see the line and the curve connecting together. Let me draw circles to visualize the point. But first, I will create a custom prototype type method using Canvas random context to the prototype for drawing a complete circle with arc. I will call it circle. Then I will assign it to a function that takes x, y, and an optional radius value. Inside the function, I will start the path, set the start angle to 0, use 2π for a complete circle, then fill it. You can write this instead of 60x inside the prototype function. Now I will create a circle for each point used in moveTo and ArcTo. We can actually see how the arc curves between the points. By changing the radius value, we can create a broader curve that moves closer to the curve direction. We can also change the curve direction itself to produce completely different curve shapes. I strongly recommend writing a smaller helper function that lets you dynamically change the value and visualize the point. It makes ArcTo much easier to understand. Like I said earlier, this method can be confusing for someone new to Canvas Studio. Let's do something using all this arc method. First thing first, I will create a path. Inside it, I will write an ellipse because the first thing I want to draw is the edge shape. I will position it relative to the center of the canvas. I will give it a horizontal radius of 80 and a vertical radius of 100. Human heads are usually taller vertically. Rotation will stay at 0. I am just going to sample the angle value here. I will start the ellipse angle as pi divided by 1.43 and end it as pi multiplied by 2.3. I will create another path for the eye. The eye is going to be a circle positioned relative to the center with a radius of 25. I duplicate the circle, you will see why in a second. I will change the radius of the last two circles to 20. This creates a glass-like eye. I will subtract 30 from the x-axis to move the eye to the appropriate side of the face. I will also subtract 10 from the y-axis to move it upward. I will create another path for the nose using Ellipse. I position it relative to the center. I give it radius of 30 and 20. Then I will duplicate the ellipse path and increase one of the radius to make it look more like a nose mark. I will move it slightly downward so it sits correctly on the face. Now I will create a path for the neck. This time around I will use ArcTo. First, I will move the starting point relative to the center. I will draw all the point relative to the center as well. I will give it a radius of 100 to create a broad sloping neck. I will subtract 53 from the x-axis and add to the y-axis to move it toward the neck area. Then I will subtract 53 from the ArcTo curve point and add 150 to the y-axis so the neck looks downward. I will subtract 500 from the curve direction x-axis and add 200 to the y-axis. I will duplicate the path for the left side of the neck. Then I will switch the negative x values to positive values to flip the direction. Now we create the lower part of the body. This lower part will use an arc. I position it relative to the center again. I give it a radius of 200. I will experiment with a few pi division until the shape matches the body length correctly. Let me increase the radius to 212. This puts the arc downward and fits it better into the lower body shape. I will also slightly increase the end angle division so it aligns properly with the neck. You were able to draw an apocalyptic by Markman using only the arc method you learned in the video. This shows just how much you can do with Canvas Studio. Try drawing something different using this ArcTo. Share it on social media and don't forget to tag my channel so I can see what's great. In the next video, we are going to learn about lines. We pursue the line method as one of the most useful methods in HTML Canvas, and we are going to see why. Follow me into the next step as we draw lines across the canvas. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to do so by the way subscribe. Ring the bell so you can get notified when the next video drops. See you.